You're right guys, today we're going to be taking the brakes off and changing them and painting the calipers on this Ford Fiesta Mk6. The brakes have just been squeaking a lot and I wanted to change them for a while now. We're going to paint these calipers blue because I'm going with like a silver, black and blue theme all over the car. So I've got the wheel off already, got it already jacked up. Wheels underneath just for extra safety, and if you turn the wheel towards you it means you can get access from behind. And just apologies for the noise over the next door, they're doing some angle grinding. The viruses came in and everyone's got spare time now. So this clip here, there's basically, if anything does fail, it holds in your pads, but I have no idea how you take this out. There's definitely a knack to it that I just don't know. There you go, that'll do. If you just put it behind there and then just pry, it just pops straight out. Keep that safe because that's going back on to the calipers when we're done. After that there's two covers at the back. They've got this cover here and then there's one just literally just behind there. And so what you do with these, I'm going to use the same screwdriver. These are rubber, so these will be easier to take out. These are hiding a little bolt behind, so you take them out. Actually they're plastic, never mind. So what size bolts are in there? Oh, they're Allen key bolts. Alright, so I'm checking if it's a 7 or 8 Allen key bolt. I have no idea what these sizes even are. It's that one. I think that's an 8. But who knows? Oh, these are brutal. I'm going to have to just do the ratchet on its own. You don't need to take these out. They can just like literally just sit in. They're going to sit in the caliper, but I've taken them out just so I can clean them up because obviously I've sprayed AC90 all over them, so I'm going to want to clean them up. So now we're taking the actual caliper itself off. The aim is to get this part that's that's holding your brake pads in. This is the bit that does the squeezing. We're taking that out of the way and we're going to hang that up, make sure we're not damaging the brake lines. But our aim now is to get these two bits just to wiggle off. So this is behind the rotor, so this is the rotor you can see here, that horrible sound. And then you've got this bolt and this bolt up here that you need to crack loose. I just need to check what size these are and then I'll get them off. And it's a 30. So if obviously you can't get things undone, AC90, WD-40, whatever penetrating fluid you have, spray it on liberally and give it time to set in and then try and break it loose again. Sometimes you can be beaten by tough bolts, so don't get discouraged and just keep trying. So I've just been able to get these two bolts off. I was using this big boy ratchet. So basically the moral of the story is if you've got big bolts that are high torque, use the bigger ratchet or a breaker bar because you'll be able to break them off. I tried using my 1/4 inch ratchet. I've actually broke the loosening setting on the ratchet. But you also may be saying, hey Brett, why are you changing these pads, changing these rotors? Because they look like they're in pretty good condition. There's still a lot of meat on these rotors and there's still a lot of meat on these pads. I'll show you these. Look at that, that's quite a lot of stuff still left on there. But the only reason I'm doing this is because this car came without any service history, no receipts, nothing. So I'm going through and I'm just doing all the little things myself. Things like the spark plugs, the HT leads. I'm going to go through, I've done oil changes, I've sorted out the oil filter, I'm probably going to change the fuel filter soon. Basically anything that's serviceable that I can do that I know that the car's going to be a lot better for, I'm going to do it. So I know that these brakes are going to be good for another few years after I've put on my new ones, and these ones on here, these rotors and these pads, I'm probably going to keep for just in cases. So in case I do need to put some pads back on because I don't have any money at the time, next time it comes around to doing the brakes, I can just put these ones back on and I can put the rotors back on and I'll be good for a good few thousand more miles. They're not going to waste. I don't know if you can store brake discs because I assume they get rusty, but I'm going to see what I can do with the brake pads, going to clean them up, and then probably throw the rotors away because I've bought the new ones anyway. I'm not going to go back and return them, and I've been planning on doing this for a while. And one of the things I'm hoping to solve from this is my brakes squeaking. Both my front brakes were squeaking before I did this. I've got some copper grease, so I'm going to grease them all up when I'm doing it, and that's just going to help prevent it all squeaking, like prevent it all seizing when I put it all back together, so I don't come into these problems again, like breaking my ratchet. Let's crack on, get these painted, and let's do it all while the sun's still up. So I'm going to get this rotor, or disc brake, whatever you want to call it. I know it's British, American, blah 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 blah. They all mean the same thing. We're going to take the old one off, and we're going to grab the new one. But before I put the new one on, we're going to clean this up with a wire brush, and then we're going to copper grease it, and then bam, put the new rotor on, just to make sure it doesn't rust weld to the other one, so we don't have a struggle of getting it off. So Charlotte's just wire brushing next to me, but I just want to show you what a piston pusher or piston puller looks like. So can you see how we've got this all set up? You've got this bit going through here, and then you've got the pistons down here being pushed. We put a brake pad there, and you're gonna, as you screw this, so as you screw this down, it's gonna push this brake pad back into this piston, which is gonna push the piston all the way back down. While you're doing this, make sure you've got your bonnet up and your brake reservoir lid off, or else you're gonna be forcing all this pressure back through the system, and it puts too much pressure on the brake lines, or it can put too much pressure on the actual expansion tank little thing at the top.
Oh, look at that!
So what we're doing now, we've taken the caliper bracket off, so the whole thing's off, so we could get the brake disc off anyway. We've been sanding it down, we've wire brushed it all, and we've brake cleaned it and everything, and now we've got this brush on paint. It's the cheapest stuff we could find, so I'm not even expecting these to be like perfect. It's just to give it that little pop of colour in the wheel well, and also to prevent rust in the future. But yeah, if I don't like them, I'll change them. If I like them, they'll stay. There was spray paints everywhere, but I felt like that would have been too messy for me. I've never had any luck with spray paints. I've always got either overspray or I've got runs, and I'm much better with a paintbrush. Saying that, I'm letting Charlotte take the reins because she's also much better at painting things than I am. There's also going to be a lot of you out there that are saying, oh, he's not using primer, but I'm not even going to use a clear coat over the top either, so take that. But yeah, basically I'm not expecting it to last forever, and I'm expecting to be probably doing this again in the future. So if this lasts longer than my predictions, then I'm going to be happy no matter what. So I'll just come around this side. I'll show you what I've been working on. So I've taken all this second side off. This came off a lot easier than the first side did. We've got both of the wheels jacked up. They're just being painted right now, the calipers are. And after they're painted, we'll be whacking them back on. I've given this a nice clean up as well, so it's a lot better than the other side was anyway. We're thinking this hub and this actual caliper set had been changed before. It's just been a lot easier to clean. Yeah, but usually the left side, in England obviously, all the water runs down to the left side of the road where the gutters are and the drains are, and when you drive through those you get splashes. It either can clean the hub, which you can see here, or it will either rust up the hub. So we usually get worst rust on the left side of our cars here in the UK. Look how these are turning out. So Charlotte's hand painted these with a brush. I'm staying away from any of the painting because me and painting just do not get along at all. She's got these parts of the calipers already being painted up. This paint dries in about like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. So we're going to leave it a bit. The nice sunny weather today has made it a little easier for us. So then we're going to whack it straight back on here with the new rotors and pads that you can see in there. They are also the cheapest rotors and pads I could find. You see that little bit of blue down there, and then the blue in the engine bay, the blue down there. When it all comes together, this should look, ooh, just look, ooh. Well, this is day one completed. We've stripped all the brakes down, painted calipers and painted everything really, and the other two pieces that you saw Charlotte painting earlier, they're inside, and we're just going to leave him outside and we'll come back to you tomorrow, little man, and we'll finish you off by waiting for that to dry and then putting the brakes all back together and putting the wheels back on and going on a little test. We were going to bleed the brakes, but the liquid isn't too old and I don't feel too bad for not doing it. I can always bleed the brakes with the wheels on in the future, so it's not to worry. Now we're on to day 2. I've just got the brake pads ready, and look in there. Before we want to put these on, we're going to have to spray them with brake clean because from the factory they cover them in oil so they don't rust. So when we put them on, we've got to make sure we take off that layer of oil. We've just put it all back together. It was the same as how we took it all off. I'll show you on the other side how we're gonna put it all back together. Obviously there's a bit of wear and tear as we were trying to put it on. You're supposed to leave it 24 hours before driving anyway. Just make sure you're copper greasing all the important parts to make sure it doesn't squeak, but I'll show you how to do all that on the other side. A final thing to do before you put your brakes completely back together is do one final brake clean, wipe it all down, make sure it hasn't got any grease on the actual disc or on the pads, and you should be good to go. So I know my lens is dirty, but I'm going to talk Charlotte through this side of how to assemble it so it can kind of help me teach you guys, so put yourselves in Charlotte's shoes. So first of all, we've got a copper grease here, here, here and here. We do this because we don't want our new brake disc that's going to be going on, we don't want them to rust weld. So if this gets rusty and the disc gets rusty, they kind of just bond together and it makes it really difficult to get off the next time. So this is just like reassurance to make sure we can get it off again next time. Also a little note for you guys, do not take out these little pins, or if you do, remember to put them back into the caliper like before you put the caliper back on, because we had to take it off twice to get those pins back in. I did the right way this side by only taking them out a little bit. So just, and spray brake clean all over it. You'll see like an oily film on there. That's because from the factory they keep them oily so they don't rust. And make sure you do both sides, making sure your gloves are clean as well, because obviously you don't want to contaminate your brakes, because if you do that then they just might not stop when you need them the most. So Charlotte's now going to put the disc on, and to do this we would usually have this caliper hung up from one of the springs from a bungee cord, but at the minute the bungee cord starts to ruin the paint. I'm just going to hold this out of the way. The best way to keep that on as well is to put a wheel nut stud. Those two bolts line up nicely. So there you go, I've got those pins just in loose, and I'm going to let Charlotte tighten them all up. So now this is what we've got. We've got that piece that we took apart yesterday and painted, and then you've got the actual caliper just sat on top. This isn't an ideal place for the caliper, but it's heavy, and when you're reaching out over a camera holding it up, your arms get restless, trust me. Now we get our brake pads, which are here. We crack them open, and then you copper grease the back of them, and I'll show you how to copper grease them in a second. So on the back of the pad, especially the one that's going to be going into the piston, so that's what this is, that goes into the piston, you want to copper grease most of it. So when you hear that squeaking noise from your brakes, it's usually from when these little tabs at the either end of the brake rub against in here, in these little channels. That's the brake squeaking sound you hear. So hopefully by painting it and copper greasing it, we've actually reduced the chances of it actually squeaking. When you're doing this, make sure you don't get any on the pad, any on the rotors, because obviously it will cause a brake failure, which you never really want. So we've got all that in, all set up. Now we just need that retaining spring. Also, when you do those back bolts, don't forget to put the little plastic caps back on. I nearly did on the other side, but I'm not going to this time. Now the hardest part of doing these brakes, this spring. That was better than last time. If you do this and you want to paint your calipers, make sure to probably paint the spring thing, because if you spray it a nice colour, it won't be this horrible rusty black on your nice painted calipers. But this is definitely the better side. We didn't scratch it up half as much as we did the other side with that spring. Get it sprayed down, get it cleaned, and then we'll get the wheel back on, lower it down, tighten up all the wheels, and then we're good to go for a test. And now we're just having to put the wheels on, the final step. One of the things you want to check is, do the brakes feel normal? Are they too squishy? Are they too hard? On your first test round, you want to check, like, if you squeeze the brakes, does it pull to one side? Because that could mean you're having, like, one brake's doing more work than the other one, which is then a further problem. Another problem you have to check for is, no, another test you have to do, sorry, is when you have to slam on the brakes and do an emergency stop, because if you have to do one of those in the future, obviously you want to make sure that your car stops. Once I get on the straight, when I can see everything, I'm going to do emergency stop. I'm telling Charlotte as well.
God, right.
So after this speed bump, bomb it, brakes. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Emergency stop.
Oh, that was one of the things in the back.
It's alright. Oh, I'm sick of hearing the squeaky brake. We found out that the squeaky brake is actually one of the drum brakes on the back. And one last check I'm going to do is I'm going to get out and just basically look and check if the brake pads are doing what they're supposed to be doing.